Hello, this is Skylit Lake reading Deku Sensei by Bloomerbill. Chapter 7 and the Aftermath. Masaru was not looking forward to the day he was about to have or the conversation he was going to have with his son. He took a deep breath and sipped his cup of tea. Then he checked the time. Mitsuki had left about an hour ago to get Inko some things for staying at the hospital, which left him and Katsuki alone in the apartment. The place had been bathed in an eerie silence the moment Mitsuki had left, but he couldn't find it in him to ask her to come back just yet. His wife needed time to come to terms with their son's actions, or she might snap again. Whilst he too was affected by the knowledge of their son's behaviour, he was more level-headed, and had taken charge of getting everything needed in order. He had already called the school to inform them that Katsuki wouldn't be attending school for a while due to a personal matter, and they would like to discuss his current enrollment. He also informed their employees that they wouldn't be able to come to work due to family emergency. Masaru had made those calls once his wife had left and Katsuki hadn't come back down from his room since Mitsuki snapped, so he stood in the kitchen by himself contemplating. The discovery of their son's violent tendencies was definitely an emotional moment. When Mitsuki had told him what Katsuki had done, he wished he could say he was more surprised than he was. He wanted to say that learning his son was a bully had completely blindsided him, but he couldn't. Katsuki had unfortunately inherited his mother's condition, and though they had taken every step they thought was necessary to prevent him from hurting others, it was clear that it wasn't enough. Masaru could recall the multiple talks he had with Katsuki over the years on picking his battles, or there was no shame in removing himself from a room if he was uncomfortable. They had also helped to teach him some exercises that would help him relax, talking to his teachers about his condition so they could remove him from a situation before it could turn violent, or call them if Katsuki had a fit. While Mitsuki took medication to help balance out her anger, they had previously refrained from putting their son on meds, given his young age and apparent lack of need, since there wasn't as many incidents since Katsuki turned 6. Masaru scowled and cursed himself for being so naive, for trusting the boys' teachers far too much. The lack of calls should have been a dead giveaway, as even his wife still had problems controlling her anger, even with regular therapy and medication. They had also considered putting Katsuki in therapy years ago, but it was a fruitless search for a child psychologist trained in explosive disorder, capable of handling the possibly explosive fits or tantrums, and wouldn't be a quirkist that would put dangerous ideas in his head. However, their efforts might have been for nothing, given that Inko told his wife they had a lot of decisions to make when it came to punishing Katsuki for his actions and how to prevent him from getting worse. The first step they unanimously agreed on was that Katsuki couldn't continue going to Aldera. And while home or online schooling was an option, the lack of social interaction and perceived confinement to the house would likely drive him crazy. Masaru had tasked himself with making a list of schools in the district with the intent of vetting them thoroughly before making any suggestions to his wife. The next decision was to get Katsuki in therapy, both with the three of them as a family, and on his own, regardless of how difficult it would be. Mitsuki was the one who insisted on finding family therapy. Not that he was going to argue, given how clearly they were disconnected from Katsuki and his life. She was also going to be taking charge on that end, since she had experience with getting a good therapist. Masaru could understand his wife being unaware, given she didn't come home as often as the model and the face of the business. But he came home almost daily, and had no such excuse for being so out of touch with their son's life. Whether or not they were going to get Katsuki on medication like Mitsuki was something they were going to consult a doctor and a psychologist with before making any concrete decisions, given that might just make things worse. He ducked his head, feeling ashamed and disappointed with his inability to help his son or protect his godson. He had made a lot of assumptions when it came to their relationship in the recent years. Izuku, while confident and happy as a toddler, had become much shyer, nervous, and introverted after his quirklessness was discovered. He had attributed that to the bullying they were told about from pre-K to second grade, as well as him getting Inko's personality, given how often children take after their parents, and she was the main role model Izuku had. Hiyashi abandoning them had also no doubt played a part in the way Izuku had closed himself off. When Izuku stopped coming around after school and stopped coming over regularly to see Katsuki or for sleepovers on the weekends, he put it up to them simply drifting apart in the last 5 years. While Inko and Mitsuki were close and had the same personalities as their sons, that didn't guarantee they would want to be friends, and he certainly wasn't going to force the two to be friends if they didn't want to. He also hadn't blamed Izuku for distancing himself if Katsuki and Mitsuki's anger issues had scared him, and he wasn't comfortable being around it after being bullied. Both had their moments, and Katsuki's quirk only made his fits all the more dangerous when they did happen. There were a lot of more things that floated up to his mind when he thought of the boy's behavior that made too much sense, with the idea that Katsuki bullied Izuku. But the few times he had questioned Izuku about how things were, or when something weird happened, the boys always had at least 3 solid explanations for it. Such as the one time he saw familiar scorch marks on Izuku's elementary school uniform, which was dismissed with a story of a boy that was being mean to him, and how Katsuki was a bit too eager in defending him. Izuku had often told them that Katsuki was the one defending him from the bullies whenever it was brought up. Masaru wasn't sure if the Greenette lied because they feared Katsuki's wrath or out of a misplaced loyalty to his son. Another more concerning question was when the boy was asking Mitsuki about makeup. He claimed it was because he saw a commercial with a hero advertising it. But now, he was sure the boy was looking for tips on how to hide the bruises. It was suspiciously around the same time that Izuku claimed the teachers were starting to crack down on the bullying. Katsuki calling Izuku a Deku of all things was concerning. But he just assumed it was another thing he picked up on from his mother after he misread Izuku's name. There were worse things he could have called Izuku than useless, given Mitsuki's potty mouth. Masaru knew Izuku was a smart and loving young man, and he didn't know which part of that crushed him more. That Izuku either didn't trust them to help with the bullying, out of fear that they wouldn't believe him, or that he felt the need to hide his pain from them to protect his son's dreams and their family. It unfortunately could go either way, given how badly the bully must have gotten. After finishing his search, he checked the time and saw it was around breakfast time. Masaru made something quick for himself and Katsuki before going to Katsuki's room and hesitantly knocked on the door. "Katsuki, are you awake?" he asked, feeling a bit uneasy as he stood outside the door. Then a soft grunt came back. "I made you breakfast. Katsuki, do you want to eat at the table?" Masaru questioned. He could hear footsteps on the other side of the door before the click of the lock. The door opened, and Katsuki shuffled after him, much more demure than earlier. Masaru sat down across from Katsuki, and the lack of arrogant babble from Katsuki made the atmosphere around them stifling. Looking down at the rice bowl with an egg he couldn't bring himself to really eat at the moment, and decided to get this over with. "Katsuki, we need to talk," Masaru stiffly told his son. Katsuki put down his chopsticks. "Is this about the clusterfuck from last night?" the blonde questioned, and Masaru sighed. "Yes, Katsuki. I need to ask you some questions, and I need you to be completely honest with me," Masaru sternly informed the boy. Katsuki normally would have scoffed back at him, but he was apparently still shaken from last night. "Yeah, whatever, old man. Just be quick about it. I need to get ready to go to school," he grumbled. Masaru took a deep breath. "Katsuki, I've already called in and told them you won't be coming today." Katsuki blinked, seemingly taken aback. "Eh?" he grunted, confused. "I'll explain later, but first, I need you to know what happened when you left school yesterday." Masaru questioned. The blonde rolled his eyes and put his head on one of his hands. "Tch, I just did what I always did, old man. I walked home part way with that shitty Deku and some dumbasses, then did homework and training in my room until the hag said it was dinner. Katsuki answered, brushing the whole thing off. Masaru felt his jaw clench, but didn't call the boy out just yet. So, you didn't follow Izuku and attack him with your quirk? He asked, choosing to cut straight to the point. What? Katsuki said, staring at him. Katsuki, did you use your quirk on Izuku? He reiterated, giving his son a firm look. Yeah, he told him, giving him an odd look, squirming slightly. Masaru wasn't sure how to take Katsuki's relaxed confession. So, you've been bullying Izuku? Masaru inquired, and Katsuki immediately balked. Fuck no, I've just been trying to teach the dumbass a lesson, Katsuki argued, and Matsu's eyebrows furrowed. Katsuki, do you know what bullying is? He asked, and he could see the anger rise in his son. Of course I do, old man, he yelled, likely insulted by the implication. So, you never hit Izuku? On purpose, intending to hurt him? Masaru questioned, and his son paused. Well, yeah, but that shit's different, the blonde replied, crossing his arms and leaning back into his chair, averting his eyes with something akin to meekness from the boy. Why? Masaru prodded, and Katsuki scoffed, then told him, "'Cause that shitty Deku is still going on about the hero fantasy crap, as if that dumbass could become a hero just by fucking studying." Masaru felt a moment of annoyance at the reason he gave. So, you have the right to hurt Izuku because he dreams of being a hero? He asked, trying to keep his tone neutral. But Katsuki again looked personally insulted. What? Fuck no! I'm kicking his ass because he ain't doing crap but being an obsessive creep while saying he's going to be a hero. Do you know how frustrating it is hearing that shitty Deku constantly going on and on about being a hero when he hasn't seriously trained a fucking day in his life? If he keeps this crap up, he's going to get his dumbass killed. Katsuki shouted, pushing himself away from the table, and began pacing, though the volume and energy behind it was closer to stomping. It ain't like I haven't tried to help that fuckwit. I tried to train with him when we were younger, but that dumbass would just sit there like a crappy possum and fucking take it. Even after all these years, that shitty Deku hasn't done crap to actually train himself physically. Katsuki ranted, occasional pops coming from his palm. Even rescue heroes need to know how to throw a punch, but does that useless Deku do anything to learn to fight? Fuck no. The only thing he does is obsess over the stalker notebooks he has and brag about being the first quirkless hero once the Hero Safety Commission fuckwits stop being quirkist assholes. Katsuki snarled, years of pent-up frustration finally given voice. I mean, Deku's whole clusterfuck of a plan is to throw himself either in between the victim and their attacker, or at the attacker while flailing around like a starfish. After all these years, and heroes he stalks, and supposedly learns from, and he doesn't know shit about strategy? Katsuki shouted. The only reason he had not tried to rip his hair out was because of how volatile he was at the moment. He hasn't done any training and he thinks he's going to be the fucking hero? He's just going to get his ass killed, throwing himself around like he has some kind of death wish. Katsuki growled, letting off one big explosion from his right hand. That wasn't what Masaru was expecting to hear, and it left him puzzled for a few moments. But he was starting to connect some dots that were forming a much better picture than what he and Mitsuki previously feared he could have said. Katsuki, did you tell Izuku you wanted to train together? He inquired, a small bloom of bittersweet hope forming in his chest. Eh? That dumbass and I promised to be partners. Of course! We were supposed to train together. That's fucking obvious shit. And since shitty Deku's quirkless, we'd have to train even harder and start sooner, but every time we did, the idiot turned into a big fat crybaby. Katsuki told him with an attitude what he was saying was painfully obvious. And constantly insulting him? Masaru asked, and Katsuki huffed. When that idiot wouldn't fight me, I tried to piss him off. I always want to punch someone when they're being annoying. Katsuki brushed off. I see. And using a quirk on Izuku, that was for what? Training? Masaru pressed, and Katsuki scowled. It's like I said, that shitty Deku wasn't doing anything but stupid crap. I tried everything at that point to get that fucker to do real training. I figured if I used my quirk, the shock of it might at least get him to do something other than fucking lay there. Katsuki spat, arms crossed again. Masaru sighed, feeling a headache building and rubbing his forehead. Katsuki, did you ever say anything to Izuku about you still wanting to be hero partners or training together in the last couple of years to him directly? He inquired, and Katsuki gave him an odd look. No, but that shit was fucking obvious. We talked about this crap since we were tiny-ass brats. About being heroes together, and I've been trying to train together with him for years. But he's always tried to fucking ditch me, the fucking bastard. The blonde responded, waving a hand. Katsuki, did it ever occur to you that Izuku didn't know you were trying to train with him, and that he might have thought you were being serious when you were trying to piss him off? Masaru suggested, feeling slightly dumbfounded that something so innocent as a misunderstanding could be the reason Katsuki was bullying Izuku. He could see the gears turning in his son's head and stare at him confused. The fuck? What the fuck are you trying to say? Of course! Deku knows we were fucking training, and there's no way he has his fucking head so far up his own ass to think I was being serious when I was talking shit. I was just spewing complete and utter bullshit. Katsuki argued, his rage lowered to a simmer by his confusion. A part of Masaru was heartbroken by his son's ignorance of what he was doing. Katsuki, he sighed under his breath, then raised his head. Katsuki, when was the last time you and Izuku did anything together? Or talked about anything? Have you done anything to make him think you're still friends? Masaru asked gently, knowing that the realization might be just as shocking to his son. Katsuki's eyes narrowed, and his mouth opened, then closed as his eyes widened slightly. No, but of course that shithead knows we're friends. We might not shoot the shit like Auntie and the hag, or see each other outside school, but we sure we sure didn't do shit since we were 8. And but I mean we've Katsuki's protests trailed off as uncertainty began to creep in. What do the rest of your classmates do to Izuku? Master inquired. Inko hadn't gone into details with Mitsuki, but Masaru could hazard a guess considering Izuku's hospital stay. Most of them are two-faced bastards. In school, they give Deku shit, but most of them don't give a damn once school ends and just fuck off. A few of them are dicks, but I'd kick their ass before they start shit with him. A couple of those extras have been leeches trying to get in on our training the last couple of years. Katsuki explained, annoyance coming back as he thought of them. Katsuki, if one of your classmates did what you have been doing, would you think they were bullying Izuku or helping him? Masaru proposed. Seeing his son's main hang-up was his perspective of the situation. Katsuki's nose scrunched up, and his chest puffed up with instantaneous rage, and he was about to spit another rant full of vitriol, then paused, his mind racing and his face becoming less angry and more uncertain as he thought of it. I'm not a bully. Someone would have stopped me if I was going too far with training. All of our teachers saw that shit, the blonde responded, looking distinctly uncomfortable at the implication of Masaru's questions. Masaru felt himself scowl at the mention of Aldera. Have you ever used your quirks in class? He pressed. Yeah? Katsuki answered, a bit more hesitant. Have you ever been punished for it? Masaru asked back. Katsuki was a smart young man, and he has been old enough to know the dangers of his quirk for years. Katsuki didn't respond right away. No, he muttered. Have you seen any of your teachers stop anyone from picking on Izuku since we learned he was quirkless? Masaru inquired, and Katsuki's silence spoke volumes. There's no way you or Auntie would let me do anything to really hurt him, the blonde countered, the uncertainty beginning to combine with fear as reality started to sink in. Masaru averted his eyes, and his hands tightened on his cap. Do you know what your mum and I were talking about last night? He asked, finally looking back at his son after a moment's tense silence. Katsuki apparently couldn't find his voice as he shook his head. Your mother had just come home from visiting Izuku and Inko at the hospital, Masaru told him, and Katsuki paled. What? The blonde said, the horror in his voice making it meek. Until yesterday, Izuku has been hiding everything you've done to him. None of us knew about your training. Considering everything you've done to Izuku, don't you think if we knew that Inko would have told you not to be so rough with him by now? Masaru explained to him. One could have seen the last thread of hope being crushed in Katsuki's eyes, and he started to tremble. I wasn't, he said, voice cracking before he fled to his room. Masaru didn't follow him, and he heard Katsuki slam his door closed seconds later. His gaze fell to the now cold food as he sat in the kitchen alone, with his thoughts again, as he tried to comprehend what to tell Mitsuki and Inko. Chapter 8. Stepping out of the comfort zone. The following morning, the Midoriyas got a FaceTime from Uncle Masa-chan and Auntie Mitsu-chan from Tokyo to congratulate Izuku for starting college. The couple asked some questions about the sudden jump in education, and he was praised for his accomplishments before they had to get back to work. It took a couple of months for him to balance his old schedule's timetable with his new college's courses, and was surprised that he now had a large chunk of free time. He had tried to fill the time like he used to with board games and his hero analysis, but he burned through all those rather quickly. Izuku did enjoy the extra free time for his analysis, but felt that he was being lazy, seeing his mum work so hard to support both of them. So he took the initiative to look into how he could legally go about getting a job. He was expecting that he would only be able to do small things like household chores, such as mowing the lawn, maybe babysitting or walking dogs. So imagine Izuku's surprise to discover that he, a quirkless 12-year-old, was legally speaking seen as nearly an adult. Apparently, according to Japanese law, since Izuku was 10, he was legally allowed to live on his own, buy, rent, own, and sell property/vehicles, get a license to drive/sail/fly, adopt children if he meets the legal requirements to do so, get married to anyone of legal age as according to the Japanese laws of marriage, work a full-time job of any profession he is trained in if he meets the legal requirements. The sheer number of liberties he had was a complete shock to Izuku, because of the times he had been allowed anything in or out of school, and his school counselors certainly hadn't said a word of this fact to Izuku. Though, after thinking about it thoroughly, it made some sense to him. Given quirkless suicide rates reached 87 once they turned 10 years old, which only got higher the older they got, and the remaining 13% that didn't kill themselves had a 58.4% chance of dying from hate crimes or domestic abuse. Being able to leave at 10 had probably been what helped drop the numbers to the low rate it was now, and it also probably got passed mainly so people had the right to kick their quirkless children out, and people could get money out of them. Well, regardless of the reasons for such an astonishing law, he was going to take full advantage of them. That night, Izuku gathered up every scrap of courage he had to ask his mum for permission to get a part-time job. It was a long talk over the pros and cons of getting a job, and eventually Inko agreed, so long as it was a light-duty job, such as a librarian or something similar. Izuku happily jumped straight into the job search, having spent the first couple of weeks scouring both online and in papers without much luck. If an employer could look past his age, they would reject him for his lack of qualifications, or some would bluntly tell him that they didn't want a geneless null in or on their property. It was discouraging, but expected, so Izuku tried not to get that hung up about them. It wasn't until he went to pick up a special order package from another prefecture for the Bakugos that Izuku found a stroke of luck. He had popped into a small store to get some things for his mum on the way back, and noticed a community corkboard. Izuku took a moment to check up the board for any small jobs that he might be able to take when his eyes locked on to a small worn sticky note. Tutor wanted 13,750 yen per session. Call number XXXXX. Izuku beamed at the note and quickly added the number down in his phone, feeling a bit more hopeful this time. Though he tried not to let himself get his hopes too high. He finished up the shopping, and when he got home, he helped his mum put stuff away. Then, when she was running the package over to Auntie Mitsu-chan, Izuku went to his room and called up the number. "Hello?" A youngish girl's voice answered, and Izuku swallowed, his nerves getting the best of him. Hello, I'm calling about your tutor's note. Is the job still available?" he softly questioned. "Yeah," the girl replied, and Izuku couldn't help feeling a bit excited that he might find a job. "Great! Can you tell me what kind of tutoring you are interested in?" Izuku asked with pen and paper already ready in hand. "Just some middle school and math and science," she answered, and Izuku felt a grin growing on his face. He could help with that. "I can do that. I'm available every afternoon except on Sundays," Izuku offered. Sundays were days just for him and his mum, and he wasn't willing to part with that. "Okay, I need to talk to Ani-chan. Hold on, please," the girl requested, and Izuku chirped back his agreement. He could hear some muttering on the other end, and waited with bated breath for an answer. "He says that we can meet Tuesday to Friday from 3 p.m. to 6 p.m., the girl eventually said. "That'll work just fine," Izuku assured. He spent the next few minutes confirming things about the session, like that the tutoring was going to be for the girl's brother, whether they would meet up at their house or another place, how long they wanted him to help, and how many sessions a week. By the end of the call, Izuku was utterly thrilled about finding a job, and happily told his mum once she was back, babbling about it while he got together everything he needed for his first day of work tomorrow. Hello, my dear friends, and I hope you enjoy this video. This is chapter 7 and 8, and well, 7 was a really long chapter. Like I think it was over 40 minutes. Not 40 minutes. That's way too much. Just over 20 minutes, I think. I might give or take about 5 minutes more, maybe. I'm not really sure, but like. Yeah, chapter 7 was like, Bakugo's reasoning, it's stretching the believability a bit, but like, you can still believe it kind of, so like, go ahead. But yeah, that's, yeah, a simple misunderstanding like that, I don't see how that would like become such a big issue. Like, at some point he had to think, am I doing this right? But it's fan fiction. We do what we want. It's always gonna have a good time. Anyway, Chapter 8, on the other hand, was really short. I think it was like only 10 minutes long for recording, which is not long at all. That's like a good one shot. So yeah. But like, I hope you enjoyed the Brightest Minds Will Shine, but not as bright as mine. Video. That's a really long one shot. I like the lore implications of that, so I hope you enjoy that as well. And in saying that, I'll see you guys next time. Bye!